Ravenscoon, welcome to the Underground Society podcast. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. I know you've been on the Dimensions tour with Liquid Stranger, and I wanted to get some insight on that. How's that been going for you?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It just wrapped up about a week and a half ago. So our last date was in Vancouver, British Columbia. But yeah, it was amazing. It went by really quick. I mean, I think it was only about 6 weeks long.
Okay.
And in tour terms, like sometimes you'll get a
short.
headline tour. Yeah, that goes for like 2-3 months. Which Martin Liquid Stranger did earlier in the year. They did the Balance tour.
I actually went to one of the. I went to the San Diego stop with Taboo was on that. Yeah.
So they had like 2 legs of it with different support acts that changed halfway through, and then I think Immersive was like the direct support for the whole thing. But typically, it's not unheard of, but it's not common for somebody to do 2 bus tours in 1 year. But everything just lined up really well, and they felt like doing it, and it was also the support was a little bit smaller. Like there weren't so many acts. It was just me, Tape B, and Trip Street. So it was amazing.
All amazing artists too.
Yeah, exactly.
Tape B's
they're all great.
EP is crazy.
Yeah, he's been smashing it, and both him and Trip Street are both like really, really, really awesome people. So that made the tour go by really quick too, which is a good and bad thing. Like I miss both of them a lot already.
So you were on the full length of the tour then?
Yeah. So the support acts for this one were on every stop. I think it was like 26 stops or something. So it was condensed. There was quite a lot of shows. I think the first couple weeks we would do like 5 nights in a row with 1 night off, and then 5 more nights, and then a night off, and then so it was back to back for sure.
Besides tour, what else has been going on with your personal project and stuff?
Yeah, so I'm working on an album right now that's going to be coming out next year. I started that back in like April or May of this year. It's coming along. It's getting to the point where I'm starting to mix and master some of the tracks. Other tracks I'm getting like top line vocals for, so it's in a really good spot, and I'm feeling pretty damn good about it. I'm working with Seth Drake on the engineering side. He's like a beast. Him and Clint Moody are really, really amazing people. There's collabs with like wave acts like Immerse, and then there's also some heavier dubstep stuff with like Dead Crow and Sully and a couple other people. So yeah, I'm feeling really good about that. So a lot of my efforts been focused on that. I have an EP coming out. I
was gonna say you have another EP coming out, but a couple weeks.
Yeah, in like 11 days from now, on Wakaan.
Yeah.
It's a 3-track EP, 2 collabs and 1 single. 2 of those are one's with Vulcan and one is with Revlo, and they're both kind of on the
both of them. They both been on the show.
Yeah, and they're both like on the heavier dubstep side of things.
Yeah.
Typically, I haven't done a lot of the more like like Lost Lands Excision type collabs with people that make the heavier side of dubstep. So I'm excited for people to check them out. I think they turned out really, really cool. And of course, I have my original song, Shake, which I've been playing for like 2 years. So I'm glad it's coming out.
What is that like, having a song that's been, that you've been sitting on for that long? Like it's coming out. You said you've been playing it out for like 2 years. What is that like?
Yeah. It's funny. So like, I like having tracks that are unreleased for live shows where people are like, what is that? And it's been such a smash success, like on the dance floor, which doesn't always translate to streaming numbers, but live. It's gone over really, really, like every time I play it, people go crazy. So I've kind of like kept it as a weapon. But it's about time. It's funny. My fiance, I was like, oh yeah, like this song's coming out, and she doesn't know that it's songs by names all the time. But she heard it. She's like, I thought that's been out for a long time. I'm like, no, I just play it. I just play it all the time. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of weird. There's like a process where, a lot of the music that I work on, even the Vulcan collab, we started that 2 years ago. So thanks for being patient with me, Sam. If you're watching this, I just hold on to things for a long time, and I feel like there's the right time to release certain things. But yeah, also if you hold on to them for too long, there's this like sense that you hate the song by the time it comes out, or you're tired of it, because then when you release it, people expect you to play it, and you're like, like I've listened to this song
I've been playing this song
10,000
for 2
times
years
already.
already.
Yeah, exactly. I don't feel that way about these songs, luckily. So the people hear a lot of them, and I wrote them like they're all kind of in the same vein and like serve the same purpose in my sets.
Mm.
So they'll definitely get a lot of playtime for sure.
Excellent. Another thing that I thought was interesting, I didn't even know until I did the research for this, but Ravenscoon Radio. That's another thing that you started, what, this year?
Yeah, I started it, I
Was
think, in February.
Okay, yeah.
And that,
Well,
yeah, that was,
how's that been going?
yeah, it's been great, honestly. I have like a Discord channel, and I'm not on it too much, but I use it for like a digital street team that I started where, I share stuff with them. They're kind of like my top fans. They can give me feedback or suggestions, and we have a suggestion chat. Somebody was like, they listen to Deadbeats Radio. Like, I mean, I grew up listening to like Pretty Lights Hot Shit, like, online like guest mixes back in the day. And I was like, somebody suggested it. They're like, why don't you have one? And I was like, why don't I have one? So yeah,
Yeah.
I got a list of names, and I've tried really hard to spotlight people that are like emerging acts and not established. A lot of these people are like maybe just got like a booking agent, or like maybe they're more established, but they like my listeners have no idea who they are. If they're in like the wave genre, which I've been pushing really, really hard over the past couple years. Um,
That's been a
and
new genre for me too. I
yeah,
just interviewed I don't know if you know Dev, rebranded to Airy.
yeah, I do.
He's just switched over from the dubstep. Yeah, yeah. I just had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and that's a new genre for me too. I actually really like wave music.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like I feel like it's the antithesis to like some of the really heavy tear out rhythm dubstep that we've had for the past like 6 or 7 years. That's dominated bass music. It's melodic and emotional, and sometimes even a little bit sad, but it's also can be really upbeat and like fun, and like it translates to casual listening on headphones, but also can do really well on the dance floor. So I think you know the accessibility of it is really, really high. I think we're going to see it become really massive in the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I hope so. It's an amazing genre. Back to your mix series. When you first started it, what was kind of like your goal? Like, what was kind of like what did you expect from it?
Yeah, so really I just wanted it to spotlight the artists that I'm picking.
Yeah,
And I've tried to pick people that I like really personally like. There's like people have reached out to me and asked me to be on the show, and for the most part, like I've considered a lot of those people, but I haven't taken a lot of suggestions. I kind of already had like I guess just like a mental list in mind of people that I wanted to showcase. But yeah, I just, my goal is to get my listeners, as my platform continues to grow, to listen to people whose music I like listening to, and, people that could use, you know, a different audience. And, my fans are really enthusiastic and they're really open minded. And I've kind of like tried
that's
to
great. Yeah.
cultivate that, where like even in my sets, I'll play all sorts of different genres. People aren't like, just hooked on like one specific sound. Like they're going to get whatever I feel like playing.
Hmm.
So I kind of want the series to highlight all those different acts. I also made a point to book all different types of genders, sexual orientations, men, women, theys, thems, like across the board, bass
Yeah, yeah.
music, and music is diverse. And a lot of time you don't see that reflected on like lineups and stuff.
I think the Wakaan team does a really good job at that too. Like all of the
Yeah.
experimental like bass type community like is very. I think that's like the number one community that like is more inclusive than like what I see in other genres.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you're
That's definitely a
continuing that
thing.
on.
Yeah, for sure. And like the world looks like this, even if EDM doesn't. So I think it's important. And like
Hmm.
those artists exist out there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, with Wakaan, and like my management team is closely tied to all that. But like on my management side, like there's only one man. The rest are all women, which I think is also really important. I mean, my fiance is like a big proponent of that, and I feel like having like a diverse cast of people that you work with is important. But yeah, to the radio show point, I wanted it to be diverse. I wanted it to be fun. I wanted to showcase people that I like actually listen to on a day-to-day basis. And the goal of it was to get those people new listeners, new fans, new followers. I tell people every episode, like, hey, go check them out on socials. In the description, I have like their Spotify listed, their Twitter, their Instagram, their Facebook. I've been doing like collab posts with the artists on Instagram and Twitter. So people can not only listen to the track, but they can follow them. And I I know a couple like repost chains on SoundCloud that I enter the mixes into. So it's getting, promotion
Oh,
to
sweet. So you're
a ton of different I'm
promoting
putting
it
like,
correctly. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I'm not just like one and done. Like I'm trying to really,
Yeah.
get people like listening to some of these acts.
What does the release schedule look like? You've only done what, 14 this year, something like that?
Yes. So I did the first one I did myself. I thought that was the best way to get it going. It's
Okay.
like, hey, here's the thing. And I counted that as episode 0. So it doesn't really, I didn't really count it because I wanted to let everybody know I'm doing this, all my fans, hey, here's this thing, and then start like the counting up. But yeah, I think we're at 14 since February. So a little bit more than one a month. Sometimes you would get, it's about every 3 weeks.
Got it. Okay.
And we have, I think 4 or 5 people already lined up for next year. Now that I'm back from tour, I'm going to start reaching out to more artists and trying to lock those in.
Excellent. Yeah, dude, it's a lot. I've noticed even just with this podcast, maybe doing regular releases and stuff, it's just the reach out process and the booking process and all that. Like, I couldn't even imagine trying to be on tour and trying to do that at the same time. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I plan all the stuff that I do like really far in advance. Like with my album, it's coming out next summer, next fall. I've been working on since like May of this year. With all of the radio episodes, I had most of those booked out like 4 or 5 months ago. And then before I left for tour, I recorded like the intros introducing the people. So all they had to do was send me the mix. And then on the road, I could, put it together in Ableton and upload it. But that helps. If anybody's listening, plan ahead. You'll be less stressed.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I want to talk about, obviously the mix series was you want to put on underground artists, and I want to talk about you being you're not so much anymore. You broke through that underground kind of position that you were in, but you weren't really, I wouldn't consider you an underground artist for very long. It's only been 3-4 years that you've really been attacking Ravenscoon at a high rate.
Yeah, I'd say since really like 2018, like the end of 2018, I think I played my first like venue show in Denver. I think it was in December, October, December, in the fall, Q4.
So 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, hardly. It's gone by, really quick. I think the amount of work that I've put into it has, reflected back. But it's a combination of a lot of things, right? It's putting in consistent, really hard work. It's knowing the right people or meeting the right people. A lot of it's luck and a lot of it's timing. And, all of those so far have, added up. I think the interesting thing is that you talk to anybody and like, it takes 4 or 5 years to blow up overnight. That's what they normally say. It's sometimes even 10 years.
Overnight success is a myth, man.
Yeah. Or like it takes 10 years to blow up overnight. But that's true. Like the legwork to get to this point is so much, and it's so much grueling work. It's so much consistency. It's so much like almost annoying people like sharing your stuff when you first start out. But once you get to these like inflection points, where for me, I think it's like the 10,000 follower mark. Once you hit that, if you're releasing good music, if you're engaging with your fans, if you're doing all the right things, it's a lot fucking easier. And you just have to keep doing it, But to get to that 10,000, it's not easy. It's hard. It's really hard.
It's so much work for such little return, I feel like.
It's like you're losing money.
It's like a snowball effect. Yeah.
Yeah. You're losing money. You're losing sleep. You're losing brain cells. You're losing, everything like to get to that point. And like, don't get me wrong, once you get to those inflection points, the work is really just getting started. Cause like to get
Hmm.
out of the underground and onto some of these mainstream things, you realize that like the politics and the bullshit that you now have to deal with are like 10 times, 100 times worse than they were
Yeah.
when you weren't at this level. And, I'm just now getting to playing some of the more mainstream festivals and, bigger venues and stuff. And, it's not stuff that I want to like all talk about, but there is a lot of just, it's crazy. It's just
Yeah.
ever changing, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the music industry alone is ever changing. It's different one day, and
It's
then
true.
2 months later, it's like, oh, this changed. Or even social media algorithms change literally daily, or like it's just it's constantly
Yeah.
evolving thing that you have to keep up with. It's never ending. I feel like who did I hear? I heard listening to a podcast the other day, someone really successful. And they're like, honestly, cherish the time that you're in when you're like at the beginning of your process, because by the time you get to like, your professional or like excisions level or whatever, like the problems that you think you have now are only like exponentially bigger by the time you're like as the project grows, your problems grow along with them. So
It's true. It's also like, you're seeing, as you said, like everything's changing constantly. There's kids that are
hmm.
like blowing up on TikTok and getting record deals, and
Yes.
and
Yep.
they're skipping like the whole 4 year thing, that 5 year, 6 year thing that I've done or people have done, outside of me, like sometimes 10 years of grueling work. Some of these people
Yep.
blow up on TikTok and overnight they're, getting booked massive things. And it's not just in EDM, it's like across the board. So,
Everywhere. Yeah.
there is like, this changing environment that, as an artist, you can complain about it or you can just, change with the times and grow. But yeah, it's weird. I think what's helpful, people are like, oh, how did you do it? And I think it's less about how I maybe did the work to get where I am, and more so about like finding what works for you. Because not not everybody is cut out to be a TikTok star. Not everybody's cut out to release 20 songs a year. Like there's something that you're good at, and you need to lean into it. It can be your branding. If you have a big vibrant personality, that could be something that's your strength. You could be like a fucking cracked producer. It's just like it's really dependent on who you are. And don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of people that are amazing at producing, but they don't do well. Um, and that, should tell people that, at the end of the day, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah. I was going to ask too, from your early days, who really gave you your first like opportunity? Was it the Wakaan team, or what? Who like first kind of noticed you?
Yeah. You know, I know he's canceled, but Bass Nectar booked me for like the fan mix um thing at Deja Vu. So that was kind of like my first like big thing that I ever got.
Okay.
Where basically they took like 5 or 6 different participants in this like mix competition, and they gave them like sets in one of the side rooms at the festival that they had in Cancun. Another winner was Brandon Reckno, um, who's also,
Mm-hmm.
had a massive explosion come up since then. So it's been great to see them, really, 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 really do amazing since then. But besides that, that was only kind of a one-off thing, but I do feel like that helped, kind of legitimize what I was doing. Peekaboo had me do like 17 stops on his tour last year, and that
Oh
was like
wow.
the first
Okay.
like that was like the first like tour that I ever did. And Matt Peekaboo is amazing. His team's really great to work with. Dirt Monkey had me on a couple stops
hmm.
of his tour. Jansen played a bunch of my songs. He was one of the first like bigger artists to ever play my music.
Jansen, I feel like he's him and Dirt Monkey. I feel like are both like they stay so in touch with like the underground. Like they're like they play Lost Lands, they play the big festivals.
Mhm.
They're like established artists, but they still stay their roots. They still stay connected to their roots, which I think is awesome.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, they're older. I think they're both in their 40s now. Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Dirt Monkey has
and
two kids,
yeah,
three kids.
exactly. And what I'm
Yeah.
not, sorry guys, I'm not calling you old, but what I am saying is they've been around for a long time. They've been around for a while. You know, they've been doing this 15, 20 years, and
Yeah.
nobody that's been doing this for that long does it unless they're super passionate about it. You'll fucking burn out. Like
Hmm.
if you don't really love this shit, you're not going to be like Jansen and Dirt Monkey. And you're right. They have their finger on the underground because they still fucking love it, right? They're actively listening to the new kids. They're like they know what the hot shit is because they like are actually about that life. So yeah, those guys are huge inspirations to me. And then Liquid Stranger too is another person that's been around for a long time. And he's also always had his finger on the pulse of what's new and hot. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, I mean,
Great
he's
label
given me,
head. Great person to run a
yeah,
label.
for sure. I mean, he back in the day, he was like doing psytrance projects and stuff like when he was still,
Yeah.
like in Europe. And I remember actually being, like in the crowd at the first Wakaan tour with like Bleep Bloop and like AU5 and Liquid Stranger. And they just had this
Uh,
kind of like banner that they had printed that said Wakaan on it. And, now seeing their production and everything now is
yeah. Traveling
it's
with
pretty
PK
amazing.
now. And
Yeah, for sure.
so before you got into music, then I know you hadn't always, it hasn't always been your career. You kind of fell into music. What were you doing before that?
Yeah, so the past 5 years, up until January 4th of this year, I was working in digital advertising at CBS, and then later it became Viacom CBS when the two merged. I think they finally rebranded to Paramount now, because they own Paramount. They own like a huge swath of the media industry. Honestly, they have like MTV, VH1, BET, CBS
Oh
News,
wow.
CBS Sports, Paramount, the whole like movie division of that. For a time, they had I think Country Music Television, um, Simon and Schuster Book
They run everything.
Publishing. Yeah, it's like
Damn.
them Disney, NBC,
Yeah.
Universal, Comcast. Can't believe that's the name of that company. But yeah, so I went like you guys couldn't come up with a better name than NBC, Universal, Comcast, or whatever it's called.
Right.
I think it might be Universal. I don't know. Universal, NBC, Comcast. One of the three. Terrible. Um, but yeah, I went to school for marketing. I got a business degree. I also got a minor in Spanish language. And I went down to South America and studied business in Spanish for like six
Oh,
months.
cool.
But yeah, my focus was the business side of things. So when I graduated, I immediately almost got a job at CBS. I applied to a bunch of different places and made it through the interview process there. Moved to San Francisco. I sold my car, all the furniture that I had left over from college. I moved with like two suitcases and a backpack into like I didn't even have a house yet. I just moved into an Airbnb. And then from there, like the first month, like found a living situation. I was making like
Wow.
probably like 40 or 50K like before taxes in the Bay at first, which is
Damn.
is like
Nothing.
nothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
because in the Bay Area, I think the poverty line's like 85K or something insane. So I
Yep.
was super super broke,
And
super
they do
poor.
nothing.
But
They do absolutely nothing for the homeless population too. It's annoying.
yeah, no, they have a lot of problems. But I fell in love with the city. I did well at work. I got promoted. But yeah, I worked at lots of different ad campaigns. At first it was mostly video game companies. And I like grew up. I
Okay.
love I love video games. So we used to own GameSpot. Or not we, but Paramount used to own GameSpot. The web review website, if you're not familiar, or if the listeners aren't familiar, it's like the two big ones are GameSpot and IGN. So IGN was our competitor. But yeah, so pretty much any video game, especially like the big AAA ones, if they're going to be advertising online, they went to us and Reddit and Facebook and YouTube. So
Cool.
yeah. So for all the big ad campaigns, I pretty much worked on them for all the clients that I had. So I had like EA and Riot Games, um, Microsoft. So I got to work on Gears of War launches, Gears of War 5. Jedi Fallen Order, FIFA, Madden. Um, what is the one game? Destiny. All of the Riot Games
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
So
wow.
so like League of Legends, like the like World Championship series. But also like their new games. They came out with Valorant, Teamfight Tactics,
Hmm.
Legends of Runeterra. They're like card game trading games. Apex Legends. So that was all really, really, really cool shit to work on. Um,
Are you a gamer yourself?
yeah, I am, and I am playing Call of Duty right now. I've always been like a FPS guy. I was
Sweet.
really stuck on Doom for a while, Doom Eternal. Um, but I'm kind of like a one game at a time guy.
My issue with playing video games is I wasn't growing up. I wasn't allowed to play certain like Call of Duty and stuff until I was like at a
Sure.
certain age, which understandably it's M. And but then by the time I got there, all my friends had been playing for 3 4 years, and there's no way I could keep up, and I didn't have enough time to put into a video game to actually be able to eventually compete with them. So I've been removed from video games since I was about middle school age. But recently, me and my roommate have been playing. We've been streaming Monday nights. We've been streaming the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 campaign, and that's been
Yeah.
super fun. So. Yeah, that's awesome that you got to work with the video games and market them and stuff. With the marketing experience, has that helped you at all? And doing certain things for your music project and stuff.
Um, I think so. Yeah. So like I have a pretty deep understanding of how to digitally advertise things. I put a decent amount of budget into Facebook and Instagram, just like Meta's suite of advertising tools. I think some people discount that, or they think it's like cheating or something, or they just aren't familiar with how to do it. Your bang for your buck, especially on Facebook, Instagram, goes really, really far. And I think knowing like what a good CPM is, what a good like CPC, like which are like cost per click, cost per like 1,000 impressions.
Cost per bill,
Just
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Understanding all of those different things definitely helps. Um, even like promoting shows, like if your show, especially in this day and age, not all the shows have been selling well until like the day of. So just getting people, you know, you're not forcing people to consume the content or buy the ticket, but you're letting them know it's happening, right? And like that's really
Yeah, it's
important.
there. Yeah.
Like, hey, it's here. And a lot of time, like people appreciate
Yeah.
that, especially like with shows. They're like, I had no idea that Ravenscoon was playing tomorrow until I saw that ad or something, So yeah, I definitely think it's helped. And just, understanding like the importance of your social presence too, um, has also been helpful. Because, at the end of the day, if you want to have a big fan base or big community and you want to serve them, like you need to be engaging them on social media and making people feel
Yes.
like you're not like a bot, or you're not just like some guy that releases songs. Like there needs to be people
Yep.
want more
A personal
want more
brand.
than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you have to showcase who you are as a person. I say this all the time, but even for the people that I work with the management side and stuff, and some of the artists that are the underground people that are around me, I constantly tell them, dude, you have to like showcase who you are. People have to get to know you. People, you can't just be posting show flyers and I dropped a new song on SoundCloud or whatever. It's like you have to like build a personal brand alongside your actual
Yeah.
music brand.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have friends that are amazing producers, and they're like, I wish more people bought tickets to my shows, or I wish like my song performed better, or like, why am I not getting bigger bookings, or I want to be booked that festival. And then I'm like, dude, you never post on social media, like, and if you do, it's like just like an image and like, hey, this thing's happening. Like whether you like it or not, people do want to connect to the artist, especially in today's age, like they want to feel like they know you. Like people want to see your personality, like, and I get it. It's hard. Like I personally, like I'm good at text and video posts and stuff like that, but I'm bad at like live camera stuff. So like selfie videos and like going live on Instagram, or like TikTok has been really hard for me. I just don't feel super comfortable just like, hi, blah blah blah, like to my phone. It feels weirdly impersonal to me, but I'm turning 30 next year. So I'm kind of, in today's tech age, kind of a boomer.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just, I'm going to have to learn to be more comfortable with that. And, you can let that deter you as an artist, or you can embrace it. Because at the end of the day, I'm like, people are like, oh, it's so cringy, or like, oh, like that like cheapens like I'm making art. I'm like, yes, you're making art. And okay, some of the stuff might be cringy, but at the end of the day, if you're making somebody else happy and you're getting them to listen to like the music that you spent all that time on, like that's a win for you
Yeah.
in my mind, at least.
Yep. Absolutely. I guess my next question is, I'm kind of going off that topic. When you were working in the advertising corporate job and, trying to grow your artist project, how did you manage to balance kind of doing both there for a while? Because I know it was like you're pretty much doing both until January, right?
Yeah. It was really hard. I was waking up at like 7 in the morning, going to work, getting there at 8, working till like 5 or 6, get home at 7 p.m. And then I'd like work on music after that for a couple hours every night. And then on the weekends, I'd work on music and not hang out with anybody really. So I
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed most, if not all, of my social life. And I think, COVID also helped because everybody was kind of
Yes.
inside. So I was doing tons of live streams. I did like 15 or more live streams. I released like 20 something songs. Like people wanted like music and comfortability and like things to look forward to. And that was like, I'd been excited to have the opportunity to like be able to do more music. Because when I was at the job, only working a couple hours a week on music, like that was it. That was my only chance to be creative. During COVID, I was working from home. I had a lot more time to do stuff. So, there was a lot of acts that took a break because that was like the first break they've had in like a decade of touring. Where to me, I was like bursting with like, hey, here's all this shit.
Yeah, like,
So
I'm new. Yeah, here you
yeah,
go.
exactly. So that really helped. And I'm not the only one that blossomed during COVID. There's a lot of emerging acts that did really, really well. But yeah, it was hard to balance the two. Honestly, like on the Peekaboo tour, sometimes it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday. And I would like go
Hmm.
straight from my job at CBS downtown, go home, change, or like bring my change of clothes to the office and like change, and then like take a Uber to the airport, and then go out and fly and do the
Damn.
show on Friday. And then sometimes I'd even
Holy
have,
shit. So after working a full day,
yeah, sometimes I'd have like Friday, Saturday,
that's
Sunday
crazy.
shows. And Sunday night at like, 2 or 3 in the morning, after the show, I would get on a plane and fly back to San Francisco, and then go straight to work and like change in the bathroom at work, and then work a full day.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Holy shit.
so
Props to you. That's wild.
yeah, if you want something, go get it, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was quite difficult. But I took off as many days as I could take off too. But
Yeah.
especially in the high intensity corporate world where you're dealing with like millions of dollars in budgets for some of these ad campaigns, and I'm the one that's responsible for them like performing
Hmm.
and running.
Doing well.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like if something happens, even if it's not my fault, somebody on my team fucks up and we make a $50,000 mistake, it looks bad on me. So, by the end there were some mistakes and I had a foot out the door. Um, but, you know, I tried as hard as I could for as long as I could to do both. But yeah, there was a time when it was like, okay, I have to pick.
What were you waiting for during that time till you could like actually just financially it made sense to be able to quit and do music full time?
Honestly, it was getting like my new team. So I got like a new manager and a new booking agent, and I signed with
Okay.
Wasserman. And Was used to be Paradigm before, which is like one of the big like 3 or 4 agencies. Like for the listeners, there's like CAA, there's UTA, and there's like Paradigm, and there's like 1 or 2 other like big ones. There's obviously a ton of different booking agencies, but those were like the big boys. Um, so like once I was on Wasserman, like they have like Coldplay and Skrillex and Billie Eilish, and like they book basically their whole job is to like book you shows. Like you have a manager who handles like your day-to-day stuff, and then the booking agents for the listeners, like their whole job is to just get you shows and get you paid because they get a percentage of those shows. So, if you get a booking agent who has, on their roster people like Odessa and, like huge acts, though
Connections
that
are
person, yeah, is
unlimited.
gonna have exactly connections to every single major music thing. And so like, once that happened for me, I was like, okay, even if my fee at the time was still like pretty low, I felt comfortable that like that team was going to be able to give me like consistency, and through consistency like more financial security. Cuz even now I still am not making nearly what I made at my old job. I was doing pretty well financially. So there is like, that risk factor. Um but it was worth it to me, and I'm not like struggling for um in any means, but I'm definitely took a big pay cut, but I
Yeah, you
enough
just had
to
to
where
cut
like
back probably your life and expensive.
sure, yeah, and or just like my credit card bill is a lot higher right now. I'll pay it later, which is not the best, but there's when you're doing music, people don't know there's a lot of like waiting on the money that you're owed. Like even if you play a bunch of shows and say you're owed $10,000 for the last month of like 10 different shows or whatever, um, you still might not see that for another like month sometimes, because every promoter has to pay up and pay out, and a lot of those people take a long time to like reconcile like their balances and everything. So as an artist, you're almost always like owed money all the time. um so there's like a big cash flow problem basically once you become like a full-time artist, is like most of the time you're owed money, and you also owe people money because you owe your manager, you owe your agent, you owe all the flights that you had to book because those aren't included, like maybe hotels. You owe rent. So like there's, yeah, that cash flow issue. Um, which is where merch comes in.
Yeah, true. Merch is a great idea for cash flow, fixing that problem. Where would you say that? How far typically is your payment delayed? Like when you play a show or whatever, how long does that usually take to get that money?
Yeah, it really depends. And it depends on
Okay.
um like the promoter that you're playing with. It depends on the venue. Sometimes like some of the Wookiee, promoters might take a long time. Sometimes they'll pay you in cash at the show. So like, and sometimes like the big
Mm.
Live Nation AEG people take longer to pay you out because they're more corporatized, so there's bureaucracy involved. I'd say that
And
Wasserman,
there's
like
sponsors and all that shit. Yeah.
sure, yeah. I mean, they have like a lot more stuff to go through. But Was is really good about getting me paid on time. So I'd say like, the first week or so of the month, I'm getting paid for the previous month, which is really good.
Oh, cool.
Obviously,
Yeah.
sometimes, at least, and if I don't have all my, like, if all the promoters haven't paid Wasserman, who then pays me, they're pretty good at like staying after them. Um, but yeah, right now they've been really really great. But yeah, there's friends that I have that sometimes they're like delayed like months, or like they're like I'm owed like $10,000 or something by all these people, but like they haven't paid yet. Or
Jesus.
sometimes artists will play something and then the company will go out of business, and then you just never get paid.
Yeah.
That happened to me earlier this year. Is you know a,
Uh,
a lot of time, like, and that's like part of the industry too, and like it's not the promoter's fault that they're not able to do that, but there's just a lot of inherent risk involved with all of this stuff.
yes, very
So
much so. And you that's I feel like it's the music industry. I mean, to a certain degree, everyone's kind of their own entrepreneurs when you have your own artist project or you have your own management company or whatever like that. So it's like I feel like it's very has a lot in common with like the entrepreneurial route too of like no matter what you do you're taking a risk on everything, so hopefully things pan out, but luckily for you things have. I was going to ask during that transition, you mentioned that you dealt with a lot of self-doubt in the past. Was that a major hiccup for you during that transition especially?
I feel like that is kind of like a ongoing battle all the time, is like dealing with the like I'm doing great or I'm doing terrible. Like, there's um there's just, a lot of self-doubt that you have to deal with, and there's a lot of comparisons, to other people where you're like, "Oh, they're doing so much better than me. Like, what am I doing wrong?" Like, I was viewing a lot of my friends, I'd be like, "Oh, my friends are doing so good, but I'm doing not as good as them. Like, I suck." Or like
Yeah.
I should quit, or like, watching people and you're like, "Oh my god, they're so much better at producing than me. Like, I should be better." There's a lot of that.
Dude, the
Yeah,
comparison is the worst when you're, especially this industry. Just stay in your own lane and do the best that you can for yourself, and
yeah,
be in a
like
competition with
laser
yourself
vision.
only. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I talked about that on the Taboo Talks podcast last week. Is like, it's once you can get to the point mentally where like you see other people winning and that's a win for you, and like you're focused just on your own lane at the same time, that's like where you really start seeing success. And it's easy to get in the mind state where like other people's success are your losses, but that's, it's not true. Like there's an abundance of success. There's not a finite amount of success to go around. And like if you're approaching your music project like other people's wins are your losses, or like someone else's big fan base is, those fans should be your fans, you're only gonna like crumble, or you're gonna turn into a bitter, nasty person that nobody wants to work with.
Yeah.
Um, and there are
Very
people
true.
like that. There are people like that, and there are bigger artists than me, or headline type people, that do view it that way, and they do try to like hurt other artists, or they, there's a lot of like pettiness involved, but like
Hmm.
those people like realize that, in the industry, and they won't want to work with those people as much. If you're just true to
Yeah, who
yourself
wants to
and
work with someone? Yeah.
you stay in your lane, like that, people are going to notice that.
Yep, absolutely. Now that you've successfully moved into the music industry full time, do you think the experience of having self doubt has improved at all? Because I know for me, like I'll tell you a little story about me. I used to compete in bodybuilding, and I know for me, like that was the first like big thing that I really took a risk on. I was like, I think I can do this. And now I'm applying the same thing to music. But once I proved to myself that like I could be successful in that if I tried and worked hard enough, and now that you've proven it to yourself that you've tried and worked hard enough to actually make music your full time career, has that improved at all with the self doubt issues that you've had in the past?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely eases the burden, right? So like when you are not successful and you're also dealing with people in the perception that
Yeah.
you're not doing well, or like you're not there yet, blah blah blah, like it's a lot easier to be harder on yourself. So yeah, I think, with success comes the lessening of that, but there's still always like, it's funny, like, you'll get your first big festival booking, and like old you would have been like, fuck yeah, like that's amazing. But now you're just comparing yourself to a different set of people, where you're like, yeah, I got that festival booking, but I'm playing at 1 p.m., right? And you're like back down to the
Yeah.
bottom. You beat all those other people that you were competing in your head with, but now like you're back down to the bottom of the fucking totem pole again, even though you just like had a huge win. And that's why you just like can't look at it that way. And as long as you just like are stoked for everything, then you're gonna be really successful. Like, and just like it's important to like celebrate your victories, and like from where you've came from. Like every time I get an offer for any of these festivals, I'm just like, fuck yeah, like that's crazy. I can't believe I'm playing that. Instead of being like, yeah, I'm playing that, but like I'm playing it at noon, like it's easy to like to get in your head. But yeah, I think it's mindset from like every step of the way.
What things have worked for you in battling the self doubt? Like, have you done like mindset, like journaling or, gratitude practices or anything like that?
Um, Maybe like internally or mentally, but I haven't like sat down and
Okay.
like tried to meditate
Yeah.
on stuff. I think it's just over time learning to change the way that you view things is really important, and that just takes time, really. Like if every day or if every time you feel bad about yourself, or like look at somebody else's success and you get hard on yourself, if you, instead of feeling those things and just wallowing in that feeling or getting angry or resentful at other people, I turn that into hard work. And I also turn that into moments of like, hey, here's this thing that I don't want to feel. I'm acknowledging that it's making me feel that way, and then changing your mind state about it. So it's really about like being like fully present and conscious with yourself. And then also, if I still am feeling like, hey, like, I could be doing better, then I just work harder. And
It's a
then
motivating factor. Yeah.
sure. And something that you also have to realize, and what I said earlier, it takes like 5 years to blow up overnight, is that like just because you're gonna go do hard work doesn't mean you're gonna see like the results from it sometimes for a long time. But when you start to see results, a lot of it happens really fast. But to see those results, you got to be patient, and that's another thing that I've learned, is to just be patient. Because people will be like, oh, like I put in the hard work, I'm on social media, like I'm engaging with my fans, I'm releasing all these tunes, I'm playing shows, like and I'm still not there. Like it will come, like it will come, and it comes at different times for different people. But like you just have to like fucking stay on and not give up, because
I've
it's it's
heard I've heard
it's
people
crazy.
explain how like it's almost like catching a wave and you have to create that wave to be able to ride that wave. So it's like
Yeah, exactly.
all the work and stuff it's building up, or back to the snowball thing, it's you have to build that momentum for it to eventually go like this, instead of, it's not really a steady climb. It's more of like a work really hard, and then all of a sudden, and even once you hit that, upward trajectory, you're still, it's not a straight line, it's a
Yep.
squiggly line.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot of people also they plateau. So like, you might get to like the place where you're playing big festivals and you're headlining shows and stuff. But if you get complacent, if you stop engaging with your fans, if you stop being like on, you're gonna also, yeah, you're gonna hit that plateau and you might fall off. And I mean, like you see it all the time. Like you can see people that have fallen off in the last few years, or just over however long you've been involved in the scene. Sometimes, if you don't keep climbing, you might fall off. But at the same time, I think it's totally fine to plateau. Like not everybody's going to turn into like a headlining act, right? But as long as you're like, some people hit a plateau, but they maintain that plateau, right? And they're not probably going to get any bigger than that unless something crazy happens, but they still have that fan base. They're still playing shows. They might like curate stuff, like they could start a label. And there's still so much that you can do. So it's different from everybody, but yeah, you're right. It does happen really quickly once it starts happening. And I think there also needs to be the acknowledgement in your head that if you're putting in all that work, that you're prepared for when it does happen, right? Like if you get to that point and you have no music and like no like money saved and like no merch plan and nothing, and you get to that point where they're like you're blowing up all of a sudden overnight, you need to be ready for that. um
Yes, yes.
so I don't know.
I love diving into that topic because I feel like so many of us can relate. Like everyone in this industry, especially for our audience, is the people who are wanting to get into the industry, and even just running this podcast. I've experienced it. You've experienced it. We've all been through it. So I think
Yeah,
it's important for us to talk about. And someone coming from someone like you who have made it, and are now successfully full time on the Wakaan team, and working in music full time. And thank you for sharing that. It seems like you
yeah,
really have a strong mindset about this. And I know we're not all perfect, but you've really cultivated that for yourself. Another thing that I wanted to compliment you on, though, is when I was doing my research, I saw a post that you did, I think late last year, and you said you were 1,000 days sober from drugs and alcohol. Congratulations,
sure.
first of all, because I have someone in my
Thank you.
family who is someone very close to me. He's been now almost 15 years sober, so I've seen throughout my life. I've watched him get to the point where he's at, and it's not an easy road, man. So what's your story on that for yourself?
Yeah. So I will be 4 years sober on February 28th of 2023. So I'm almost at the 4 year mark.
Congrats. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
I appreciate that. And yeah, you're right. Like, especially you've had, the firsthand visibility into somebody who even 15 years,
Yeah.
like that every year, it's not like it always gets easier. There's always going to
No.
be, it's like grief. When you are first grieving, the waves of grief are hitting you all the time. And then, as you get further out from the large like death or whatever event, there's still really big waves, but they just hit you like less often. But they're still always going to come. It could be like 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years from then, and you might get hit with like a wave. So you always kind of got to have that mindset in the back of your mind. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the way that I did it was a little unorthodox, where I didn't have like a program. I didn't
Okay,
go
I was gonna
through.
ask if you went through
I didn't.
recovery or anything like that.
I didn't. I hid my problem for a long time. So I think, doing it through a program like that was still hard for me, because that would be like acknowledging publicly. I don't know. I had a weird mindset around it.
That makes
And
sense. It's you. There's a
yeah,
lot of shame that people build up around that sometimes, so it makes sense.
yeah. And I've tried to familiarize myself with some of the things that the programs do without having to do them. But yeah, I basically like, I'd been like weaning off of partying and like the really problem, like drinking and drugs that I was dealing with, where I was like, in the hospital a couple times. I like overdosed and almost died a couple times. Um, and most of that, like, nobody besides like maybe a few close people knew. And I like hid it from everybody. Um, but by the time I got sober, I had already been like weaning down. But it was still, like when I did decide to party, I still had no off switch. So like I was like sneaking, drinking, getting like way more fucked up, or like I'd, party one night and it'd carry over into the next like 3 or 4 days, or like go to work drunk and stuff. Just people like weren't aware of that. Um, but yeah, by the time I was there, like my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, was living with me, so it was a lot harder to like get away with. So
Sneak,
I
yeah.
yeah, so I more dealt with like the problem of, once I start, I can't stop, and like my stopping is like almost dying. Um Whereas some people have like the type of addiction where it has to be daily. Mine was more like binge sessions.
Yeah, because there's
But
there's two type of
yeah.
addictions. There's one is continuous, and the other is just like every so often you're just binge, and like you said, you almost some people get to the point of almost killing themselves.
Yeah, and there was a point where I was, using every single day, like when I was living by myself, and like when I was in college. That's when I was like that, like all day, every day. It didn't matter if anybody was around. But by the time, Taylor moved in with me, and I'd been trying to get better for a long time, it had gotten to the point where it was less of a daily thing and more of like a binge type issue. Um, so that kind of like weaned me down, right? Like I went through the withdrawals, for the most part already. I got through a lot of the hard parts, and I separated myself from a lot of the people that were either triggering that behavior or like part of it, or encouraging it. But yeah, I eventually just like, I had like a 4 or 5 day like blackout, um, like binge, and then like the last day when I was super hungover, I like decided to cold turkey everything.
Was alcohol a big problem for you? Because I know when you
Yeah,
cold turkey alcohol, sometimes, well, it was more of a binge at that point, so probably not so much for you. But I know a lot of people when they quit alcohol, like they go through a crazy like
you
what's
have
that
to be
called, rebound or
hospitalized.
a detox. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can actually die from alcohol withdrawal. There was a point when I was living alone where I would binge for a couple days, and it would be so bad that I would have alcohol withdrawal where I was like vomiting for days and like shaking and
Uh,
like, you know, like having panic attacks and sweating, and like nothing would make you feel better besides like drinking more. Or that would like
oh
get
my
rid
gosh.
of the withdrawals. So luckily I wasn't, you know, at that like, you know, rock bottom point as much anymore. Um, so it
Mhm.
was more less of like the physical addiction, because I mean I used to like shake all the time when I wasn't drinking. Um, and it was more like the mental, less than like the physical addiction, which you know is just as hard. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and a lot of it again is like mindset, right? Like it was a lot of like changing my mindset around things, and like I was also tired of feeling horrible all the time, like physically and mentally, and I, you know, got help for my mental health problems, which I think were like a lot of the driving force
Huge help.
underneath that, yeah, is like addressing and finding out that I was dealing with bipolar disorder. You know, which a high percentage of people with bipolar disorder are also have substance abuse issues. And a lot of times those two
Being
things,
around that, a lot of those people,
yeah.
I've probably met more people that are bipolar within, you know, AA and stuff than I have met outside of it. So
Oh,
for sure.
100%, 100%. Yeah. So like if you're not treating those things like those episodes, because both the depressive and the manic episodes for me trigger like wanting to either do drugs or drink alcohol. So, and I always knew I would get in this weird mood, but I just wasn't for some reason identifying it, you know? And I think also looking back with hindsight is that like I now that I see how I was feeling at all those times, it was just like me fully having like the illness like really blossom, because it really starts showcasing itself in your early 20s, and that's when I was really having a lot of serious problems with like drugs and alcohol, you know, looking,
History of it in your family?
yeah, both mental like
Okay, yeah.
illness and alcoholism. um
A lot of people don't
are-
realize that yeah, alcoholism and well and mental illness, both of those things are can be hereditary. So I'm
oh
lucky
yeah,
enough
it's
that I didn't
yeah.
get it from my family members, but yeah, it's like it runs deep in my family as well.
It's genetic. Yeah, my uncle's dying right now from alcoholism.
Oh my
My
gosh. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. My great grandfather had it on my mom's side. My great grandfather on my dad's side. Like it's funny because like my dad has like five or six brothers and sisters. There's like six kids. They're Catholic. Big Italian family. Only one of them really has like full blown alcoholism. So like it can skip a ton of people in the family, and then like one person, they're like, oh, you're fucked. um,
I know I'm fearful of like when I have kids. I want kids someday, and it's like man, like I like almost this like makes me second guess it. I was like I don't want to pass that. I don't even know I don't have it. Could potentially my kids could potentially have it. So it's kind of scary.
yeah. Yeah, and that's a worry too, is like my fiance has like a strong history in her family of abuse
Yeah.
and drug addiction and mental health problems, and she also deals with, you know, some mental illness that's similar to mine. So we're like, fuck, if we have a kid, are we like rolling the genetic dice? Like they're going to be fine, or they might have bipolar, or they might be depressed. So that's definitely like a scary thing that you have to kind of think about. And I honestly, I don't think we're gonna have kids. Not just because of that, but like that's definitely like plays some kind of factor into it. But
Some
yeah,
people
I
just
mean the
don't want kids,
whole,
man. No shame.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like I'm selfish with my own life. Like
Yeah.
we both want like to do all these things, and we both travel a lot, and I don't want to be like an absent father, you know. Um,
Hmm.
so you know, I
Hey,
feel like
but
it's more
thank you for that.
responsible.
Thank you for thinking ahead because
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's better to like acknowledge that than like, you know, have to, you know, put your kids through that kind of thing. And I think that that mindset is something that people our age and younger are kind of more open about, you know, like a lot of us have had parents that weren't there, or like parents that existed in their lives but might have been abusive. And instead of like continuing the cycle, a lot of people are like, you know what, like I'm either not going to have kids or I'm going to be different and like actually like work to do that. or if, me and my partner, get divorced or like it doesn't work, you're seeing a lot of people co-parenting more, I feel like more and more than ever. And that didn't used to be a thing, right? You get divorced and the dad's gone or the mom's gone and
Gone,
that's
yeah,
it. That's it. You like never know them. So it's been cool to see that like kind of like societal shift too.
for sure. To kind of tie this all together because we are running out of time. Do you think your addiction, your struggle with addiction and stuff, did that have anything? Because I know this whole kind of episode where our conversation was about
Yeah.
like the confidence that you have in yourself. Did you start drinking because of maybe that reason of like your self doubt and confidence within yourself?
Definitely. I've struggled with like self-image issues my whole life where I might even seem confident now, but I still like am struggling with that kind of thing all the time. It's just now I have to kind of face it head on. But yeah, I felt like drinking and drugs made me cooler and it made me not like cooler to other people, but to myself. And it made me like more confident. It made me less like anxious. I was like the cool version of myself, that didn't give a shit. And like I could like socialize and go out and like not give a shit about
Liquid
anything.
courage.
Yeah, definitely. But like then it just turned me into a terrible person. Um, and like you don't even like see yourself as that. You still think that you're like all these things, but you're just like have this veil over your real self-perception. So yeah, I definitely think that some of the insecurities that I've had to deal with have contributed to that. That's why it's interesting, like, you know, your mental illness and your substance abuse issues and self confidence and how you were raised and your genetics, all these things play into all of those things. So it's, kind of like addressing each one of those. And also forgiving yourself, right? Like, all of us have hurt people. And like, if you don't think you've never hurt anybody or been a shitty person, you're lying to yourself. And you're probably a narcissist. Or you're just like, no,
And
not
you're
actually.
actually the worst.
Yeah, not actually. But, everybody's hurt somebody. Everybody's been a bad person to somebody. Everybody's, and I fully believe that. Like, I just don't think there's a person on earth that's been perfect their whole life, right? Like
We all make mistakes.
we've all made mistakes and we've, even if you used to be a bad person, like the thing that I think is really important is that people have the capacity to change and be better, unless like you're actually like a full blown psychopath, like, um, everybody has like the capacity to like grow and change and be a better person. It just takes
Have to
work.
put in the work.
That's like the theme of this is work on yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Big component of that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. As we wrap up here, do you have any questions for me before we wrap up?
No, I just appreciate you having me on and letting me ramble and talk about all this stuff. I think it's really
Absolutely.
important for people like you to exist and keep, making artists feel accessible to whoever wants to, listen and engage. And
Yeah.
if they, without people like you and yourself, like, the world would be a little bit worse of a place. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That was a great compliment. Thank you so much. Where can listeners find you and support you at?
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of those places. I'm mostly on Twitter and Instagram. I'm pretty responsive. Please don't message me on my personal Facebook. I promise you I don't want to talk to you there, but I'll talk to you everywhere else. It's Instagram.com/Ravenscoon. Twitter, it's Ravenscoon Nest. SoundCloud, I'm responsive on there too. It's just almost all of them are just /Ravenscoon.
Sweet. And look out for that new EP and album supposed to be getting released next year.
So the EP is out on 12/16. So please pre-save that. Actually, that's a one last piece of advice. If you support an artist, pre-saving helps.
Do you have the pre-save link ready?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Sweet. Send that to me. We'll put that in the description so that people can go ahead and go click on that. Last question, final question. I ask this at the end of every interview. If there's one piece of advice you could tell yourself when you first started producing music, what would that be?
I'd say, going off of what we've been talking about, just believe in yourself and don't give up.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.